Hey, Abby, good morning. How you doing today?
Good morning,
Are you
mate.
over the jet lag, sort of?
I am, and I'm excited. We've got 3 packed days here in Davos.
See, look, there's some skiers. That's what you're supposed to do in Davos. Have fun and ski. But instead, the whole town is taken over by World Economic Forum folks.
I watched your whole thing this morning on private cat.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
There we go.
You know what? Who would imagine that you'd have Rebel fans in the heart of Davos? She said, I don't know if the microphone picked it up, that she loved our review of the private jets coming in. Well, that's a pretty friendly start to the day. You know, it's not all unfriendlies here. There are some insurgents and some dissidents in town.
Absolutely. So this year's theme officially for the World Economic Forum is in the spirit of dialogue.
Oh, give me a break.
That's the goal of this year's World Economic Forum at Davos, to expose people to wider ranges of voices, to a wider range of ideas, maybe even an argument, but one that we have deeper understanding from.
Well, we're going to put that to a test, Ezra. You and me, we've challenged them. This is, I think, our 5th year here. 5th year, is it?
Sounds right.
5 years we've come here. They've had zero spirit in dialogue. I think this year.
They don't even reply to us when we apply to be accredited. We fill out the forms, we say we want to be accredited. They don't even say no to us. They just treat us like we're unpersons. And we are unpersons to them. These are the masters of the universe. These are oligarchs. If we were in Moscow, these people would be called oligarchs.
Absolutely. And what we're going to do now, just to kick off our reporting from here in the Promenade, let's walk down to the actual entrance, walk through, see what's different this year, see if we can bump into people along the way, and then we'll set up our camp where we camp out for almost 3 days straight, waiting for those oligarchs to walk on out.
The very first stop is BlackRock. And just to explain to folks what happens, this is a normal town. This is a ski town. It's sportsy both in summer and winter. But for 1 week every January, the whole main drag is taken over and regular shops are turned into like movie sets almost for the oligarchs. So this is not a BlackRock building 365 days a year. That's a BlackRock building 7 days a year. And all these shops and restaurants are shut down to make way for these, you know, some of them are companies, some are countries, some are lobbyists, some are politicians. It makes for a very interesting walk. But remember, we are outside the secure perimeter here. That's why peasants like you and me are allowed to be here. At the very end, you'll see the high security gate. I call it the drawbridge. The you and I are not allowed in, but every once in a while, a young prince, a VIP prince, comes out of the drawbridge and rubs shoulders with us peasants. And that's where the fun starts. Like Anthropic. I have no idea what it is. I think it's an AI company. That is not Anthropic year round. That is probably some ski shop or something. But for this week, it's part of the presentation.
This year they're boasting that it is the largest World Economic Forum by attendance, by attendees, with the greatest amount of world leaders, the greatest amount of business leaders, the greatest amount of NGOs that are coming to 2026 World Economic Forum.
This is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time.
And when you read who's actually attending this year, I believe them.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, it seemed like the World Economic Forum was falling apart. Klaus Schwab was engulfed in all sorts of allegations, including of a sexual variety. It seemed out of sync with the populist free market leadership of Donald Trump and Javier Milei, but they've rebounded. In fact, they've sort of co-opted and invited those people to speak. I mean, Donald Trump is speaking here. Nigel Farage is coming here. I don't know if he'll speak. Here's another example, by the way. The country of Belgium has taken over what was probably a sporting goods store. And I don't know what Belgium is trying to sell or convince people of. TPC, House of Davos. I have no idea what TPC is, but inside the inner operating system of life. I don't know what that means, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention, it's like you are in a kind of Disneyland, but instead of, you know, Mickey Mouse and Disney princesses, you've got billionaire hedge fund managers, oligarchs like, I don't know, Bill Gates. This is one of his favorite get-togethers. It used to be George Soros' favorite get-together. He's a little old to travel now, but his son Alex comes here. But there are dissidents amongst them.
And we're seeing them, and we've seen them every year. To be honest, it's nothing new for dissidents to walk up to us on the streets here in Davos and say, "Well done, thank you for holding them accountable." Often they're locals that live here, but otherwise they're also just business people that are coming to network. The carbon footprint, like every year, is massive. To build this fake little town for the 3 days essentially of the World Economic, it's meant to, on the books it's like 4 days, but it's 3 full days of the World Economic Forum, and they do all of this just for those 3 days. And these are the people that tell us that if we don't minimize our carbon footprint yesterday, the world is not going to last longer than, what was it, 10 years, 30 years ago?
The funny thing is a lot of them have just abandoned that whole global warming discussion because the big deal now are what they call data centers for AI, and everyone wants in the new fashion. And AI is so energy intensive, it needs nuclear, it needs fossil fuels. And so even Bill Gates, who was an extremist on the global warming issue, he sort of has, he's voting with his pocketbook. So you see a real decline in the global warming theme here and a rise in the AI theme.
Climate is a super important problem. There's enough innovation here to avoid super bad outcomes. We won't achieve our best goal, the 1.5 or even the 2 degrees. And as we go about trying to minimize that, we have to frame it in terms of overall human welfare, not just everything should be solely for climate.
It's true. 5 years ago when we were here, every billboard, every sign, every company was virtue signaling about their position on climate change, on global emissions. We're not seeing that. I haven't seen a single sign about green energy here.
No, and Greta's not here either. Hey, let me show you something. So here's the Republic of South Africa, and there's Indonesia. And we walk by Belgium. It's sort of like in North America, we have Epcot Center, which is like a Disneyland with different pavilions for different countries. It's like an expo. And they're all here to sell something. There's a lot of politics. For years, Ukraine has had a pavilion where they make the case. Russia, by the way, is banned from the World Economic Forum. And I have to give them a tiny drop of credit. They had the Iranian foreign minister scheduled to speak, but they canceled his invitation after the massacres in Iran.
But interestingly, on their statement on X, I saw they didn't frame it the way you just did. They didn't call it a massacre. They said that there was
tragic deaths,
the tragic amount of deaths or something along those lines. Yeah. Like people who have just suddenly died around Iran and they couldn't in good conscience have the foreign minister come and represent Iran. I think he was set to speak, but they rescinded on that invitation because a bunch of people died in Iran mysteriously.
There's Poland and Stripe, and the thing about power is it attracts other powers. So if Donald Trump is coming here, well, any other world leader who wants to rub shoulders with Donald Trump might say, okay, well, if Trump's going, I'll go too. Maybe I can meet up with him. Like I say, Ukraine house, Brazil house. Some of them are trying to get investment, for like Invest Philippines. We're literally walking by right there. And you can't really knock companies for trying or countries for trying. What worries me more is that they're not just here to sell investments, but they're here to open themselves out to ideological shaping. I mean, all of a sudden, when all the world leaders started using the phrase build back better at the same time, that didn't just happen randomly.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
Hot houses like the World Economic Forum cook up these ideas, and then the politicians sort of spread out from here. World Economic Forum does not pass laws for Australia or Canada, the United States. But what they do is they're like a laboratory of ideas, and quite often they're bad ideas.
And we know that even they recognize they're bad ideas because they back away from their own ideas over the last few years, like we said, with climate change, that was an idea that they've really quietly stepped back from because it contradicts with their future AI world where they need those data centers. That makes no sense if the most important thing in the world right now is about your carbon footprint.
I want to keep my eyes peeled for American politicians, especially Republicans. And the reason I say that is that there's so many things about Davos that should offend the sensibility of conservatives, Republicans, populists. I mean, this is the opposite of all those things. So sometimes you see politicians, like we bumped into a governor a couple of years ago, a conservative Republican governor, and I said, what are you doing in a place? I bumped into Paul Ryan, the Rhino. I said, what are you doing in a place like this? And you know, sometimes they're a little bit nervous that they were spotted in Davos. It's like they thought what happens in Davos stays in Davos. Oh, you know, there's another fun thing, I suppose. It's cold out, so some of the brands give out little coffee and tea just to keep people warm. Do you want one?
I'm good. I don't feel like being bored out at 8 o'clock a.m., but we'll give it a couple hours.
If Citibank gives me a free coffee, I'll take a free coffee from Citibank. It's the least I can do. This here, they call it the Culture Plaza, and sometimes they have little, I'm not going to say protests, but they have political messages here.
Oh, this is the first climate thing I've seen.
Yeah, you know, yesterday we were at the private jet airfield, and we saw government jets, we saw private jets, we saw a jet come in from Geneva. They flew from Geneva here. 2 people got out of it. You could fit a bunch of these in that private jet that we saw arrive yesterday. Ride the Change, Climate Hub Davos by Green Up. I don't even know what those words mean.
Personally, Ezra, for me, this is useful. It's a car made in my size. But for the, you know...
For the more well-endowed man like myself, who's got a little bit of heft to him, I'm worried I would sit in this thing and would tilt to the left.
I think for a real-sized person, it's not actually that useful. I want to thank, what is it now? It's Larry Fink for thinking of small people, for building the world around us.
You know, I think the likelihood that someone like Larry Fink or Klaus Schwab would ever get in a little car like that's almost like a kid's toy car. Should we take a peek at what's going on there?
Sure.
Morning. A species corner for nature. What are you setting up?
Monkey Rock, or species corner for nature.
Monkey Rock, so what does that mean?
So this is a collaboration of art and science to make sure the species and biodiversity have a voice in the World Economic Forum this week. It's a nice collaboration between Joop van Lieshout, famous Dutch sculptor, who's the monkey on top of the rock, and Climate Base Camp, who speak science to culture.
I saw a press release from Greenpeace that says for every 4 delegates at Davos, there's 1 private jet. They sort of did the math. What do you make of that?
My goodness, we know that's the situation, and that's why we're here, to make sure there's an eye on climate and nature during the week, so that the questions behind the questions can be asked about transportation methods, fuel types, and all the choices that need to be made in getting here, as well as the big policy frameworks and economic system changes that are required.
Can you give me an example of an economic system change that you would propose?
We'd like biodiversity, climate and nature to be fairly represented on the balance sheet.
So how would that work? Just give me, make it a little plainer for me. What would that look like in real life?
So that's representing the true costs of the fuel choices, where your energy comes from, cost of raw materials, and make sure that's fairly represented in the business choices.
Hey, can I ask you one question about those mini cars? I mean, they're pretty fun. I mean, you're a really tall guy. I don't know do you even fit in those cars?
You know, I've been and had a look at those, and I can get in one.
But you need help getting out, though. Hey, let me ask you a question about those. And you've been a good sport for talking to us, because I know you're setting up. I look at a guy like Larry Fink, the big boss around here, and I look at all these, I call them oligarchs. I got nothing against people who are wealthy, but these are like the masters of the universe. They don't live like that. They live private jets, 5-star meals. They're telling the rest of us to turn the thermostat down on a cold day. Don't you think there's a risk that a well-meaning fellow like you might just be brought in for a little bit of greenwashing, that Larry Fink and his corporate jet says, oh, no, we got the Monkey Rock guy here, so we're okay. Like, do you ever feel like the folks who invite you here are not doing so in good faith?
Well, there's ups and downs of that discussion, but we're 10 years in terms of representation at World Economic Forum, and we've seen the positive reflection of sustainability on the agenda and where we are at the moment, which is a lot of backsliding. So that's why we're here for the first time in a public space, to make sure that the voice is still heard against that landscape, and a fair representation of climate biodiversity during these discussions is super important. And we all have backgrounds in science and business, and we're here as part of this collaboration to make sure that continues to be a voice.
We've been coming here a few years too, and we've noticed over the last few years this kind of step back from, so if you came here 2020, every single promotion here was about the climate, about emissions, about carbon footprint. Now, actually, this was the first one we see. Is there kind of a step back, and why is it that they're kind of backpedaling here in Davos when it comes to these issues?
Well, I think that, as I said before, there's ups and downs of things that are top on the agenda. We know the key risks in the World Economic Forum are changing in terms of things like misinformation, climate, economic volatility. So I think we ride those risks, but the constant is we all rely on climate and nature to be able to do business. So that's why we're committed to a constant presence here in the World Economic Forum.
I understand you are, but is the World Economic Forum still committed to it?
Absolutely. The interim chair is Andre Hoffman, who was here opening the Monkey Rock yesterday, and he talks at the intent sessions about nature 100%. And we were there last night with that message very clearly heard.
Can I ask your name just so we get it right?
Yeah, Edward Price, University of Exeter, Nature Climate Impact Team.
It's really nice to meet you.
Nice job.
Thanks.
He was a nice fella, but it's just, to me, it's all... I think you hit the nail on the head. Before I asked him that question, they're using him to greenwash it. And the fact that the co-chair, which is the other chair, so there's two people that replaced Klaus Schwab this year. The fellow, which is, I believe, a Swiss businessman that I don't know much about, that's who came to open it. And then you have, obviously, Larry Fink, who's been promoted because I'm guessing if you want to get the job done well, you may as well do it yourself.
Larry Fink is about rate of return on investment. And if he sees a little bit of greenwashing as a small price for a big payoff, if it buys him sort of protection from the Gretas of the world, he'll spend that money every day. And it's hard not to notice that fellow we spoke to, who I believe is well-meaning, and acting in good faith, he's freezing in the cold with a little, I don't even understand the installation there. He's not on the main stage with 1,000 delegates. And frankly, I'm glad, because I think environmental extremism has gone too far. But I think that even in the tone of his voice, you could sense that they don't really mean it here. I mean, when we were at look at all these limos here. Not one of them is electric vehicles. There was a great question you asked at the airstrip yesterday. Were the VIPs, were those fancy limos electric? And then one guy laughed. What are you kidding? That's for show. That's not for actually scooting around with VIPs.
Are they all electric? Not electric?
No, these are real cars. You need real power on the mountain road, not electric. You need real cars.
No, electric.
AI house. There's so much AI here. I don't even know what half of it means. I don't think they do either. I think it's just the new buzzword. A few years ago, sustainability was the buzzword. Now it's AI. If you're not saying it, you're not cool. I don't think half the people here even know what their companies really do other than talk about AI. So there's USA House, which we popped by last time. There really wasn't a lot going on last time, but with Donald Trump coming this year, they probably have some events because there'll be a lot of people traveling with the president.
Absolutely. And I think when we were driving past, I did see a lot bigger one at the entrance. Yeah. So they have a second location. This is the one that they had last year. Wednesday is Trump's speech. I guess I'm expecting him to do what Trump does at these kind of events and let the world know all his achievements, especially in this current environment on this side of the world. But in addition, I feel like he's going to smack down some of the horrible ideas that come from Davos.
This afternoon, I want to discuss how we have achieved this economic miracle, how we intend to raise living standards for our citizens to levels never seen before, and perhaps how you too and the places where you come from can do much better by following what we're doing, because certain places in Europe are not even recognizable, frankly, anymore. They're not recognizable. And we can argue about it, but there's no argument. Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way. That's in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. The consensus was that so-called dirty jobs and heavy industry should be sent elsewhere, that affordable energy should be replaced by the Green New Scam, and that countries could be propped up by importing new and entirely different populations from faraway lands. This was the path that sleepy Joe Biden administration and many other Western governments very foolishly followed, turning their backs on everything that makes nations rich and powerful and strong. And there's so much potential in so many nations. The result was record budget and trade deficits and a growing sovereign deficit driven by the largest wave of mass migration in human history. We've never seen anything like it. Quite frankly, many parts of our world are being destroyed before our very eyes, and the leaders don't even understand what's happening. And the ones that do understand aren't doing anything about it.
You know, my fingers are so cold, I'm tempted to get some coffee just to dip my fingers in to warm them up.
It is cold.
There's the Alliance for Global Good, Gender Equity and Equality. Talk about your pink washing. We talked about greenwashing a minute ago. That's pure pink washing. If you've got misogynist countries here like Qatar, who treat women like chattel, who fund extremism like Hamas, and you have a little bit of the Alliance for Global Good, Gender Equity and Equality, that's your way of throwing a few grand to some ladies to say, no. The World Economic Forum really does care about the status of women. Pinky swear we do. Yeah. I'm sure they're good people, but like that environmentalist we just met, they're here as window dressing.
Absolutely. And you see a lot of that here. So we've learned over the last few years, there's different groups of people that attend the World Economic Forum. Not everyone is the evil insider that's trying to control the world. There are people that are just useful idiots that are being used to, in that case, greenwash, in this case,
pinkwashing.
Pinkwashing is...
Now, you'll see a lot of people here are staff or helper outers. Yeah. A lot of people are wearing a Davos name tag. And there's different colors showing different status. Are you a worker bee? Are you a big shot? Are you a speaker? And there's a real hierarchy, and a lot of it depends on how much money did you pay to get here. It's sort of like being at a rock concert. Do you have a backstage pass, or are you at the nosebleed seats in the bleachers?
CNBC has certainly been downgraded since our little confrontation with them at the entry, probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned them. I mean, look at that. They've taken over what I'm guessing was some sort of a chalet, and they put all their trademarks on it. And I'm guessing they have a studio in there. I walked by sort of quickly. That's an example. They paid an enormous premium for that right, because they want a hobnob. Ask yourself this question. If CNBC, they probably paid no less than $250,000 for that building for 1 week. I mean, that's probably on the low end. And the reason they're here is because they get to interview all the big shots and maybe do deals with some of the big shots. There is no possible way that anyone working for CNBC would ever jeopardize the corporate interests of the project by asking an uncomfortable question. Never. You don't plunk down $250,000 as a member of the World Economic Forum and then stink up the joint. And so there are plenty of journalists here, Avi. They're just paying to be here with the regime. They're not real journalists in terms of serving their viewers. They're here to serve another corporate purpose. I see TikTok is here. I don't remember seeing TikTok before. No doubt that they're here to deal with conversations like censorship and political censorship, which is sort of funny because TikTok has been a Chinese company for years and they've never been called to the carpet for their algorithm. But now that it's being sold to an American interest, suddenly the Europeans want to censor TikTok. Isn't it funny that way?
Yes. And what's interesting, while it was a Chinese company, it's been one of the most censorious. I've watched the algorithm just completely wipe accounts very quickly. I'm not sure if the purchase by an American interest is going to change that. I hope it does. I hope they do stand for free speech. A lot of those big tech companies are moving in that direction, not because they care. I think they realize that's the financial gain is there.
There's going to be a big battle brewing. I mean, there's a lot of divides between the United States and the European Union. Greenland is one, but a huge one is on censorship. And you see calls in the United Kingdom to actually shut down X, formerly called Twitter, which would be an astonishing move. And the U.S. State Department is pushing back very hard. They've even denied visas to some foreign regulators, which is, it's almost like putting sanctions on a European bureaucrat. And I think the reason for that is not just that the Europeans like putting fines on American companies to make money. It's that they can see that a free social media marketplace is one of the reasons Donald Trump won. And that could happen in Europe too. If there was free Twitter in France, perhaps Macron would lose. I think social media is a reason that Keir Starmer in the UK is extremely unpopular. So it's a matter of political survival for the European leftists to destroy American First Amendment style social media platforms.
Speaking of censorship, we're just about to pass Invest Qatar. This is I believe the first year Qatar's got set up a, what do you call these things?
Yeah, they're on the move. I mean, my Prime Minister, Mark Carney, visited Qatar just a couple of days ago before coming here. I mean, Canada's really realigning itself. First Communist China, then Qatar, now the World Economic Forum. We're pulling away from the American orbit, bizarrely towards a communist Islamist orbit. It's really depressing. I mean, this is a young Swiss man here, but he's standing outside the Qatari kiosk, which is sort of gross.
See where we get to sign up to get some of that Tucker Carlson money.
That's right. Yeah, you should ask if Tucker's in there when you go in. See that up ahead there, you can see the Wall Street Journal, really one of the most prestigious placements in the whole joint. And again, the Wall Street Journal, they're here because they want news. They want to interview newsmakers, and they're part of a very political company that is probably doing deals with a lot of the VIPs here. It is scientifically impossible for them to embarrass the World Economic Forum. That would be like cutting off their own leg. They would never do it. So they're not here as journalists, is what I'm saying. I'll just say a quick word about police and security. There's a fair number of police in the city. Different police forces obviously called in from all over Switzerland. There's also some military police, lots of private security guards. And because of that, there's a relaxed atmosphere. Like you see VIPs walking around without bodyguards. It's very safe here. And that's one of the reasons you can go straight up to these VIPs and scrum them. If we were in Washington, D.C. or Ottawa, Canada, you wouldn't even get physically close to some of these folks. I really like that poster. Every year we see an activist here who talks about slave labor in the third world and how some of the biggest companies here really turned a blind eye to it. It's not just China, but China is one of the worst countries in terms of slave labor. There's still slave labor in much of Africa and other parts of Asia. In fact, numerically speaking, there's probably more slaves in the world today than at any time in history, as astonishing as that may sound. So I don't know the groups there when they say no slavery in your supply chain, look closer. I don't know who they are, but that's actually the closest thing to a dissident statement we've seen on this little walk this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be 20 years ago.
Global Commission of Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who that is. For all I know, that could be a United Nations NGO. So maybe it's not quite as dissident as I think. Maybe it's in fact.
It's a bit like the greenwashing.
Yeah, maybe. But
we're here. We have Qatar here. We have China. We almost had Iran here. But guess what? We stand against slavery.
Well, that's a good point. Guys. Maybe I'm being too doe-eyed about it. Qatar used slave labor in part to build their soccer championship. I mean, Qatar has a lot of indentured workers. So maybe this is exactly what Qatar likes. Just have a little billboard on the side of the road where we tip our hat to slavery, but can you allow us to have pride of place in the promenade so we sell Qatar? Maybe I'm being too gullible about that poster myself.
I get the feeling that you're not going to have official advertising here hasn't been approved.
Yeah.
And for it to be approved, it has to be from within the clique. It's got to be there's no Rebel News signage around, let's just say that.
Well, we couldn't afford it. I mean, I understand that at the end of the block, there's a church that is rented for $1 million for the week, which is just incredible. And I mean, you can't really blame the church. I mean, they get a year's, like $1 million is probably enough to run that church all year round, just by the luck of it being on the main strip. Every year, some company takes it over for the week. And I think it's actually the United States that's renting it this week.
So many memories this place carries for me now. Running up and down this same promenade, chasing all these different world leaders and oligarchs. I saw somebody else describe them on the internet in another way, which I really liked, but I just can't quite remember. Maybe gangsters.
Well, it's always cold. At least it's not sort of snowy and slushy as it's been in previous years.
But it is cold. It is very cold. My fingers are feeling it.
We're about 2/3 of the walk towards the security gates. This is the office for Meta. That's the company that owns Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. And of course, they're going big into artificial intelligence too. They were one of the worst censors of the internet, especially during COVID times. Mark Zuckerberg claims he wants to pull back from that and has asked for the support of the State Department to do it. So maybe there's room for reform, but frankly, I don't trust any of these social media companies. Well, we've come to the end of the promenade. It starts with BlackRock and it ends with the United States of America. This church, which is rented for different companies every time, it's for the USA. And right across the street is Palantir, which is sort of an AI-driven mass data company that helps with war fighting, if I understand their PR correctly. In some ways, this is the antithesis of the World Economic Forum. I've always felt that the World Economic Forum was a kind of counterweight to the United States, an attempt to limit the United States through all sorts of regulations and ideology, to almost like the United States is Gulliver in Lilliput with all the little people trying to tie it down. The World Economic Forum is generally anti-American and anti-freedom. But I think they realize there's so much energy in America right now, as Trump would say, it's the hottest country. And so you've got Palantir, you've got the USA, and really, I don't know, I think that there's a split personality at the World Economic Forum. In some ways they hate America, but they certainly can't stop talking about it or wanting to get rich from it.
It certainly looks like Trump is doing what Trump does, where he's like, they don't like me, I'm going to put my foot in it, I'm going to stand here, I'm going to come with a larger presence than ever, I'm going to come and talk to him. So we've got to watch his space. I think Wednesday is going to tell us where Trump really stands with this World Economic Forum under the new leadership of, or I don't know if we can say really new leadership, but official leadership of BlackRock.
2024, the U.S. built less than 2 million new homes, but Biden admitted more than 8 million new migrants. And those days are over. In 2025, for the first time in 50 years, the United States had reverse migration. Boy, that was nice. And these were criminals that were being taken out of our country because they allowed people to come into our country from jails, from gangs, drug dealers, murderers. 11,888 murders. We've gotten most of them out.
But I think that's the end of our walkthrough here. In the beginning of it, you can see this is the entrance you were talking about earlier. That's where we peasants can't get in. This is where the VIPs are forced to walk through and kind of think this promenade's their safe space. This is where we're going to camp out for 3 days now. And catch those VIPs and challenge them and hold them to account. And I'm hoping this year, in the spirit of dialogue, we can actually have some real conversations with these people. And you guys at home, wefreports.com, bookmark it now. And if you support what we're doing here in Davos, please consider chipping in to help us cover those costs of being here, getting here, and being here for these few days, because it's not only expensive for the USA to hire that church, it's super expensive, even for us little rebel peasants, to get here, to hold them accountable. wefreports.com.